Alright, I'm continuing on here with Legion of Honor, and I've done the first campaign season, and actually just finished the second campaign season, which according to the campaign season sheet, the Brunswick Manifesto is the first campaign season. War of the First Coalition Continues is campaign season 2, and this actually had multiple event cards in a round, which was a little bit different than how the first campaign had gone. You can see there was one in Garrison event, which was the Louis XVI guillotine. Then you move the campaign phase, or on campaign rounds, and you've got the Battle of Neerwinden / Traitor. Was the first event card, but then for the second and third event cards, there were 2 in each of those rounds. 2B, Rebellion on the Vendée, and 2B, Siege of Toulon, and then 2C, the Terror, and 2C, Battle of Fleurus. So all those things happened. That was the first time that I've had multiple event cards in a single round, which, again, like I mentioned in my first video, was something that initially wasn't clear to me exactly how the event cards worked in each round, but I've figured that out, and I'm now playing the game correctly in that regard. So with the second campaign season done, moving into the third campaign season, which, as you can see here, is War of the First Coalition, and a number of more event cards in this than in the previous season. So it looks like there will be now here, I'm not sure. Okay, so for this one, there's going to be 3 in-Garrison events and 2 on-campaign events. So the in-Garrison events will be the coup d'etat of 9 Thermidor, the coup d'etat of 11 Vendémiaire, the marriage of Bonaparte and Josephine, and then for the campaign season, there will be a Brigitte Lodi, Battle of Castiglione, and Guides at Arcola / Battle of Rivoli. So I don't know which armies those involve. That's one of the things we're going to do here shortly, will be to get our new assignments. As you can see, for the second campaign season, and you can see here on the assignment sheet, campaign seasons 2 and 3 are on the same line. So we will see if these guys get new assignments. That ended up with most of them in the Army of Italy for Campaign 2. There was one, the blue player, in the Army of the Reserve, which was the only one that actually took part in any of the campaign events. The other armies that took part in the campaign events were the Army of the North and the Army of the Sombre Muse, and of course there was no grognards in those armies to take part in those events. So it's kind of boring event cards for round 2 when you don't have anybody in the game that's actually taking part in those. So we will see if these guys get reassigned for this next campaign season. The first thing that we did was the if I can do this without making the camera too blurry. At the start of a new campaign season, you've got the campaign season segment, which is the fair sex phase. We did introduce a lady in the last round, in the last in-Garrison season, and so Hortense, the lovely Hortense, is in the game now. She's got a charm of 10 and influence and money of 5. So very charming. Nobody's gone after her yet. So we'll see if more women get introduced into the game in the next in-Garrison rounds, which there will be quite a few this campaign season. I just finished the money transfer and tax phase. This is where grognards get to move money back and forth between Paris and their purse. Money that's kept in the bank in Paris is taxed at 10%. Any money in their purse, of course, is kept on their person and not taxed, but is subject to being lost if they're taken prisoner or plundered or what have you. There's different event cards and things that can end up costing the money that's on your person. So So you don't want to carry it all on your person because you could lose it all. So you want to kind of get that bank account rolling because you're going to need that money to woo the fair ladies. With the money transfer and tax phase done, we move to the aging phase, which I believe we roll a d10 and subtract that from their age. And once again, this is not in, there's no section that describes the aging phase here. You have to turn to the section of the book which is organized into these different sections with Roman numerals. You need to turn to the section on aging and then read in there, the section on health, which will then talk about how a grognard there, the aging phase. So again, there's no layout in this rulebook that says, here's what you do in the aging phase. It just says aging phase, and then you just have to kind of go and find, and it doesn't give you a area to go find that information in. You just have to deduce, the aging phase. Well, I bet the health section probably talks about aging, and sure enough, it does. Maybe that's fine for some people. It's terrible for me to try and find rules that way. To just know where I need to look, especially in a game like this that uses a lot of different terms for different events in the game. So, anyway, aging phase. During each aging phase, grognards roll 1d10 and divide the result by 3. Then you subtract that number from the grognard's health. So I will do that for the 4 grognards and come right back. Okay, with the aging phase done, and nobody, you're rolling 1d10 and dividing it by 3, so nobody's going to be losing more than 3 health during the aging phase. So we only had one guy that lost more than 3 health, and interestingly, it's the guy who's already in the worst health of the whole group. He was gravely wounded in one of the battles during the campaign phase, so his health is down into the 60s now. Everybody else's health is in the 80s or 90s. So he's a little bit behind everyone else in terms of vigor. So after the aging phase, now we go to the assignment phase. And this is where you look at the grognard's standing to determine his assignment. So, as you can see here, during the assignment phase, each non-absent grognard rolls 1d10, compares the result to the number in parentheses in the box containing a standing counter. If the result is greater than or equal to that number, the grognard's reassigned. So, what happens is depending on what your standing is at, in this case his standing's at 6, so you would need to roll a 6 or higher in order to get reassigned. So you may not want to be reassigned. Generally you're going to know if you've looked at the cards, and this is where sort of replay value comes in. If you looked at the cards, you'll know in each campaign season which army is more likely to be active, and you may want to move your guy, try and get your guy into that army. Now you can do transfers, which it talks about here, but that has to be during an in-garrison round. He can try and change his assignment to another round. There you go through a procedure to do that, to try and to move somewhere more, potentially more valuable to your character's advancement. So we'll go ahead and run through the reassignment for the current grognards. So we'll start with the purple guy here. He needs to roll a 6 or higher. He does not, so he's not reassigned. Our green player, his standing got just ruined, so he's going to get reassigned regardless because his commander hates him. So actually I didn't even need to roll since the 0 is considered a 10 here. So he gets reassigned. This is where you then roll 2d10 to determine which army he will get placed in. He's currently in the Army of Italy. We'll re-roll here with the blue die as the 10s. So he's a 6. That puts him in the Army of the North. So he has been reassigned. The Army of the North was the one that got all the action last campaign season. We'll see if they do this time. I have not read the cards for this season in advance, so I don't know which armies are going to be active. A red player, he needs to roll a 5 or higher. His standing is kind of middle of the road. And he does not, so he stays where he is in the Army of Italy. And the blue player, he needs to roll a 5 or higher. He also does not, so he stays in the Army of the Reserve. So I only had one transfer change. And I believe when they get reassigned, they then roll standing. I think they then roll to see what their new standing is. So when newly assigned to a command or reassigned within the same command, the Grognard determines his new standing. You roll 1d10 and place your standing counter in the box according to the number that you roll. So, and there you can see during the in Garrison phase, he can try and get a reassignment within his current command in order to improve his standing. None of these guys necessarily need to improve their standing. They're all either at 0. Actually, they all are at 0, except for the green guy, whose standing is automatically going to change. So we'll see what his changes to. 3 does not improve as much as he would have liked. It moves him up to a -2. And what standing does is on combat cards or in Garrison event cards or any card that gives you Napoleon's Notice or Glory, if your standing is a negative, it's going to subtract from that number. So in some cases, if your standing is negative enough, it can wipe out any of these Glory or Napoleon's Notice benefits that you get from these cards, which can be really kind of devastating for your character. So you do not want to have negative standing because it means your immediate superiors do not like you, and it's going to affect your advancement in the game. So you want to get your standing positive. If you can get it positive, then that will add a bonus to any Glory and Napoleon's Notice you get throughout the game, or throughout the round, rather. So always try and focus up to the positive standing. So the assignment phase is done, and then there's the Glory phase, and that's where I think that phase only takes effect if you've got like a Legion of Honor, or if you have a wife currently in the game. Again, we'll look at the so here in the sort of short description of what each thing is. But again, it doesn't tell you how to do it. Like here's the aging phase. Oh, the Grognard's health declines. Well, how do you do that? Well, go look in the rules in the health section, and maybe it'll tell you. Of course, it doesn't tell you where the health section is or anything else useful. So again, that's why these rules kind of were very impenetrable to me at first. Once I'm going in the game now, everything seems fairly simple. It's not really a difficult game at all. But just getting through that initial wall of impenetrability in the rules and approachability, to even just figure out how the game flows and actually plays, just was very difficult for me. But here you can see Glory phase. Grognard earns glory for having the Legion of Honor and a charming wife. I'll assume that's all that there is in the Glory phase. There's no section in the book that expands on the Glory phase. You just have to read about Glory, and it might tell you how that's impacted by the Legion of Honor, but actually you need to go to the Legion of Honor section to see how the Legion of Honor works with your Glory, and then you have to look in the playbook under the fair sex rules to find out what effect a charming wife might have on your Glory. So this is, the Glory phase, like if you go and look at the Glory section of the book, it doesn't even break down how this phase would affect, or how you'd be affected in this phase. You have to go to these individual sections, or divine where these individual sections are in the rules, and then read about them there and see if they have any effect on your Glory in the Glory phase. And so again, just a terrible way to construct rules. So nobody's going to be affected by the Glory phase, which means we go to the in-Garrison rounds and determine the Senior Grognard. And in this case, our Senior Grognard last round was blue, and I think it's going to be him again this time because he has 22 Glory. Red, the red and blue are the two highest ranked. They're both Sioux lieutenants. but blue has more glory, which is actually it's not glory, it's Napoleon's Notice that you do look at before glory, and yeah, blue has more Napoleon's Notice, so he will be the senior grognard, which means that purple will get the first draw, because the senior grognard, whoever the senior grognard is, the person to his left, person clockwise to his left is the first to draw. So, but first we have the recovery phase. There's no recovery because nobody's injured. You've got the income phase. All of our sergeants get 2 francs. So he gets 2, and this guy gets 2. And then our sous-lieutenants each get 4. So 2, 3, 4, and 2, 3. So simple enough in the income phase. Support phase, that's where you would pay to support your wife or girlfriend. Nobody has a wife or girlfriend yet. These guys are still young junior officers. Now you go to the deck phase, that's where you build your deck for the first in-garrison round of the campaign season. So as we can see here, for campaign season 3, we have 2 in-garrison rounds. The first event card is the Coup d'etat of 9 Thermidor. So what you do, and I've got these all laid out in order, in a face-up stack in order. So you can see here, this should be the next card. 3-1 Coup d'etat of 9 Thermidor, drawing grognards assigned to the Army of the Reserve. So we've got one guy who could potentially be affected by this card, our blue guy who's in the Army of the Reserve. He helps to suppress the Jacobins and retire Robespierre. He'll get Napoleon's Notice +1 on a 1d10 roll of 1 through 5, or -1 on a roll of 6 through 10, and he can get some glory and experience. But some cards will have the keywords "we were there" on them, which means it's not just the drawing grognard who's affected by the card. So say this card said "we were there" on it, it means so maybe somebody in the Army of Italy draws the card, but because it says "we were there," it means that any other grognard who's in the Army of the Reserve, which is the army affected by the card, would actually then get to do the events on the card. So, but here, there's no "we were there," so it's only if the blue grognard draws this card will he get to do it, because he's in the Army of the Reserve. If anybody else draws it, if green, purple, or red draw it, it'll have no effect. Nobody will get to take part in this event. So, so that's kind of, blue's going to hope that he gets to draw that, because he'll get some potential for some good bonuses out of it. And then I've got the shuffled in garrison events here, and so because you've got 4 grognards playing, you draw 3 cards for each grognard. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and that creates your deck. And of course I'm not going to be able to shuffle these one-handed, so what I'll do is stop the camera and then come back and we'll draw through an garrison round. Alright, with the cards actually shuffled how they're supposed to be shuffled, we will start with the purple grognard first, since the blue one is our senior grognard. So first card you get is one of these end of round cards. Basically what this means is if somebody draws one of these and the event card has already been played, the round ends immediately. So, if say the event card were the first card you drew and then somebody drew this as the second card, that's going to be a short round. So, however, if that hasn't happened yet, then what this does is essentially this grognard just loses this turn of the round. Basically, there's nothing for him to do. So now the green player draws. He gets the Dine with Magistrate, and Garrison card he gets Experience 1, Charm +1. So we'll upgrade our green guy, Experience and Charm. Now, considering that usually you're advancing these tracks in the single digits for numbers, considering that just to get from a sous-lieutenant, or from a sous-lieutenant to lieutenant, you need Glory 45 and Experience 45. going to take you a while to advance through the ranks here. So, but there are 16 campaign seasons, and each season has multiple rounds. So, people can eventually start accumulating enough stuff to advance. But it seems pretty slow going to me at first. So green is done. Red draws. He's got idle time. It's a Garrison card. Here's where he gets to pick an action. He can take fencing lessons, which costs money but increases his fencing. He can study manuals to increase his experience. He can take an extra job to get some extra money. That would be money plus 1d10 times 2. He can read an etiquette book. That's costs money but adds charm. He can meet a lady and court or propose. He can request a transfer. He can seek office. He can challenge somebody to a duel. He can do corruption, which gets you more money, or he can gamble, which can get you money, or potentially lose you money. I think for our red player, I'm going to take some fencing lessons. That'll cost him 5 francs. And I believe he has 11. So drop him down to 6 francs and then increase his fencing, which is already at 3 by 3. So he's a pretty skilled fencer. In the event that he needs to do some dueling, he'll have that to look forward to. So red is done. Move to blue. You displease your commander, standing -1. Well, that's not good. Now he's at a -1. He may want to get himself out of the army of the reserve sometime in the future. The purple player goes. You're passing fancy. A lady of the Bonaparte family invites you to her boudoir. Napoleon had a lot of sisters, and I don't know about his cousins and stuff, but he took care of his family pretty well, although this is just after the Siege of Toulon, so Napoleon is not the emperor or something like that. This is early in the Napoleonic period. He's not the guy in charge. Hence, in this early stage of the game, Napoleon's notice is not required for promotions. That only becomes a bigger deal after he becomes a bigger deal. So here we can pick an action. Excusez-moi, glory -1. So, one of the Bonapartes comes after you. You should go for it. Because if you say oui, then you get glory +3 and roll a 1d10. Now here you can gain Napoleon's notice and potential ire. Or as you can see here, you can end up reassigned to Spain, where careers go to die in the game. Fortunately, it's not campaign season 11 yet, so there's no chance of going to Spain. So it's pretty much if you go through with it, you'll get +3 glory, and since this is our purple player, he'll actually get +4 glory because his standing is fairly high. So I've only got a chance of getting a Napoleon's notice -2, which his Napoleon's notice is already at 0, so it can't go any lower. So there's definitely no downside to doing this at this stage in the game. So we will up his glory by 3, and actually by 4 because of his standing. So he is at 9, so he will jump up to 13 glory, which is pretty decent. He should be able to get a promotion here pretty soon because his experience is at 15, and he needs 20 experience and 20 glory to get the promotion to sous-lieutenant, so he's getting closer. Good to know. Alright. Oh, now we roll the die. See what the result is. He rolls a 5, which is fine. No Napoleon's notice negative in that instance. So that's purple. We go to green. There's our event card. Green is in the Army of the North. So here it says drawing Grognard's assigned to the Army of the Reserve. He helps to suppress the Jacobins and retire Robespierre. So unfortunately the blue player did not end up drawing this card, so he doesn't get to take advantage of it. On the other hand, it doesn't help green either because he's not in that army, so it's just treated as a no action for him. So red draws idle time. He can pick an action. Oh, he got this last time. He can practice his swordsmanship, that's a fencing +1. He can tour world battlefields, which is experience +3. He can sell his loot to get some money. He can take some singing lessons to increase his charm. He can meet a lady and court or propose. He can request a transfer, seek office, challenge, corruption or gamble. Let's introduce another lady into the game. So you go over here to the fair sex chart, the fair sex sheet, and just pick one of these ladies and roll. So we'll go with Yvette. Roll for her charm first. It's a 7 for Yvette. So that gives her 3 charm and influence. Now we roll for her influence. Rolled a 9. So that gives her 3 influence. And now we roll for her money. That's a 4. That gives her 4 money. Now you, in order to court or propose, I think it's where you add her money, charm, and influence together, which in this case would be 8. And I think it's if your charm, his charm's only 2. If your charm doesn't exceed that, then you can't attempt to court her. Let's double check that. Adding together the following values taken into charm. Total money divided by 25 and rounded down. Rank, title, the 1 for each rank above sergeant. He's a Sioux lieutenant, so that would be 1. No office, no ardor. Subtract from this sum the number in parentheses corresponding to the lady's charm, influence, and money. On the numbers in parentheses. So yeah, so he's nowhere close because the numbers in parentheses here are 9, 7, and 4. So you have to take 20. Obviously, his money divided by 25 is going to be like 1. This guy's the poorest of all of the. Or no, actually, he has more money. Maybe it's blue who's the poorest. Red actually has. He's got 49 francs plus 6 in cash in his purse, which was still dividing that by 25, and then adding his charm of 2, and then his office. That's still not going to be higher than 20. So you can see here you have to have your money and charm well underway before you can start courting these ladies. But we will get them into the game at least, so they'll be there and ready to participate in the courtship stuff once these guys get a little more rank, money, and charm under their belts. So if the Grognard chooses to meet a lady on this turn, all he can do then is either court or propose. Since he doesn't have a chance of getting anywhere with those, it kind of ends his turn, but at least it does bring another lady into play. So the blue Grognard now draws. He gets the same thing, idle time. He can practice his swordsmanship. He can write a military treatise. Oh, that's good. That would improve his standing. Work as a fencing instructor. He gets money plus his fencing level ×2, which means he gets 6 francs. He can attend a soiree. That increases his charm, which is already at 5. He can request a transfer, seek office, challenge, corruption, or gamble. I'm not going to request a transfer. What I will do is write the military treatise, get him some more experience, gets him 1, 2, 3 more experience, and increases his standing by 2, which is good because that gets him to the +1 modifier on the standing. Alright, so I move to purple. The Emperor fancies your lady. Well, there's no Emperor yet, but nonetheless, pick an action. Accede to his desires, the glory -3, but Napoleon's notice +1. Or take exception, glory +3, Napoleon's notice -1. Lose turn instead. If you have no wife or mistress, if Napoleon, not Emperor, campaign seasons 1 through 6, or if Napoleon in exile. So there we go. So it's The Emperor isn't there yet, so you just lose your turn if Napoleon's not the Emperor. So purple loses his turn. Green goes to Burger insults Napoleon. Lose turn if prior to round 3-2. And it is. This is the 3-2 is going to be the next round. So because Napoleon, I guess, is not high enough rank yet to have people fighting duels over insults to him. So since we're not quite to where in the game where we're supposed to be, green just loses his turn here. And there's lots of cards like that throughout these that are going to be affected by what campaign season it is and so forth. So green loses his turn. Red is dispatches. Since he's a line officer, he's a glory +1. His standing will not affect that. He's at a 0 right now. His experience is +1, where he can do zeal +3. Will add 3 to each of these things, but he will essentially lose his next turn. Since there's only 2 cards left, this is the perfect time to do this because he's not going to get another turn this round because the deck will run out of cards. We will move on to the next round. So if you're going to get a zeal card, which is where you get to add this bonus at the expense of your next card play, you want to do it when you know you won't have a next card play because there's no penalty against you in that case. So he will actually get 4 glory and 4 experience for this, which is a pretty good deal. So that bumps him up to 22 glory. And he's at 21, so that will get him up to 25 experience. And he may be getting close to being able to promotion. He needs 50 glory and 45 experience, so he's not close to. He's close to one of those. He's not close to both. All right, so back to blue. Blue gets an inspection and Garrison card, and here there's another one with zeal on it. He can get 4 experience for this and no penalty to himself, so that's a good deal. 2, 3, 4. And purple gets the last card, illegal activity. Perform action or lose turn. So he can borrow from the pay chest. If he were a field officer, he could smuggle. If he were general, he could do illegal requisitions. Check for found out as per corruption using M gain plus divided by 2. Money gain divided by 2 rounded up. No office lost. Now let's check the corruption rules. Which I think are under... And again, this is where you have to look it up in the rules. Like, there's no section on corruption. It's under, I thought it would be under money. Apparently is not. Here it is. It is under offices for some reason. So somehow you'd have to know that corruption has to do with your offices. This is card 56, illegal activity. Office is not required in order to conduct illegal activity under this card. Rolls 1d10 and multiplies the result by 2, 4, or 6, depending on whether he has a line, field, or general rank, respectively. It's the amount of money he can gain. It determines his risk by dividing his money gain by 2 and rounding up. Resolve to determine if he is found out as per corruption above. It's 2d10 compares this result. So divide the money. Gained by 4. If he's not found out and suffers no adverse effect. He's found out, see below. If Gardner is found out, he suffers the following consequences. He does not collect the money. He may lose his office. Doesn't apply here because he has no office. And again, that he cannot seek office. That doesn't apply either. Standing is reduced by the amount of money sought. I'm not going to do that. I don't want to. No point risking it at this point in the game, especially since his standing's at 0. If you were already at a negative standing, it's like, well, how much lower could he go? So I don't really want to do that. So that's an example of an in Garrison round. I'm not going to play through these rounds quite in that much detail going forward. I just wanted to show how you'd progress through a round, through the turns, how the cards worked, that sort of thing. What I'll do is come back and do an on-campaign round because the cards there are different, and you could end up having a battle, which also involves some different card drawing and stuff like that. So we'll come back when we do an on-campaign round.